everyone able to view my screen? Just give me a yes in chat and we'll move ahead. Harun is asking if I could share the code. At the end, I'll definitely share the code in the chat, and you can compare the code with yours, my code with yours. So I'll definitely share it at the end. Okay. So let's see. So this is the basic recap that I'm going to do, very quick recap before moving ahead to the new topic. The topic that we covered in the last lecture were links and images. These were the major topics. So right now, let's go through the links first. So I'll just quickly close this file panel and we'll just see first as the external hyperlink. How do we write it? We write an anchor tag that is that starts with your lowercase a, letter A. You mention the attribute href, that is hyperlink reference. You mention the actual address of the domain, the website, the domain of the website, google.com. This target attribute specifies that if I will click on this link, the link would open in a new tab. Like over here, the link opened in a new tab. If I remove this attribute, the link would open in the same tab. So this is your external hyperlink, very simple, very easy to use. Now comes your internal hyperlinks. Internal hyperlinks is all about linking your own website pages. So I made a list of few texts over here which are not working as of now. I'll quickly close this one. This is because of this, it's happening. If I click on this one, contact, you see nothing is happening, nothing gets open. That's because we have not provided any hyperlink reference over here. Now I'll show you the file structure, the contact us page. Just I'll minimize this one. The contact us page is lying in this folder. We are in main folder. Remember, we are in main folder. I'm rendering this page through index.html and I want to go into this contact us page. How to go to this contact us page? First of all, if I have to check if this is in same directory or not, the contact us folder is in same directory in the main folder. So if I have to go to another folder, I will write the name of the folder. You see, I'm getting the recommendation automatically. I would select contact us. Following that, it shows me what all folders are and files are there. I'll select contact us HTML. That's it. So this is the path for your contact us HTML. Now, if I hit save and I'll quickly close this one. If I save my page, and now if I click, you see the color changes. Now it's an active hyperlink. If I click on this one, it would take me to the contact us page. So this is when your file is in subdirectory. This is in subdirectory, the other directory. Now moving ahead to personal contacts. Personal contacts is one directory inside contact us. So our approach would be go to first contact us, then go to personal contacts and then use the file personal contacts.html. So we're writing the name of folder, then the again folder which lies inside contact us and then going to the file. Now if I hit save, the color for this link changes. If I click this one, the personal contact page opens. Okay, and okay, I'll close this one. Yeah. Moving ahead to FAQ page, your FAQ page is outside the directory. Remember, we are in main folder. I want to come outside of my main folder and then access the FAQ folder. How to do it? If you want to come out of your folder, you have to start with double dots. So I'll quickly write double dots and /. It would provide me all the folders outside my folder. I have FAQ, images, and my own folder. So I would select FAQ and inside that I would select FAQ.html. I'll save this file and FAQ becomes an active link. Just see this one. And where is the about us? This about us, see, the about us is in the same folder. I'm in main folder, about us file is in same folder. So when a file is in same folder, there is no subfolder over there. We simply write the name of file. See the difference? We're writing name of file over here, but in contact us, we have to first go to the folder and then access the file. Similarly, for personal contacts, we first go to the folder of contact us, then personal contacts, and then access the file. And for FAQs, we write double dots, then // to move out of this main folder. and then we write the name of folder and then the file name. So if I save my file now, About Us becomes an active page. So this was about the internal links. Any doubts on internal links? Quick doubts, anything you didn't understand, any file path you didn't understand. If no doubts, just say no doubts, I'll move ahead. Perfect. Now moving ahead to images. We studied we can access images through two ways. One is through external source, that is your absolute link. The other is your relative link or relative path. And that path comes in this attribute, SRC attribute. Image tag is IMG tag. It's a self-closing tag. There is no content that needs to be specified in between the tags. Like we have this content in between opening and closing tag. For image tag, there is no such content. So they are called self-closing tag. Now this leaning tower of Pisa is not visible over here because I've messed up with the URL. I've added two additional commas. So if I hit save, the file comes. And this is coming from this particular file. I've taken the address from here, put it over here, and that appears on my page. How to take the address of an image? Right click on the image and copy image address. That image address is the URL that we can put. So I've taken from the official site, I've taken the image and I've put it over here. This was your external link, that is absolute link. Now, why this alt tag? It is good for screen readers, and in case your URL doesn't work, the text would appear. Suppose I write Leaning Tower of Pisa. And if I hit save, and now if I just make some error in my URL, hit save, just see some, yeah. So it appears over here, Leaning Tower of Pisa. That comes from this alt tag. Now, if a user is accessing your web page and something happens, your web page is not able to access the image, then at least this text would tell the user what this image was about. So it's just an information text. So I'll quickly come back to the original one. Yeah. So this was external link. Now we have two images that I want to take from my internal storage memory. One is Statue of Liberty and other is Eiffel Tower. Statue of Liberty is in same directory. I am in main folder, index, and there is a subfolder for Statue of Liberty. How do we go to that? Very simple. We write the name of folder and then we write the name of image, the name of image, right? And here I would write simple text. Let's say Statue of Liberty. And if I hit save, the image would come over here. You see this image. Similarly, if I want Eiffel Tower, I have to move out of my main folder, then go to the images folder and then access the file. How to do that? Just write two dots and / when you want to move out of your folder. And I would select images and then I would select Eiffel Tower. And I'll write a simple text. Let's say Eiffel Tower. If I hit save, the image comes over here. Rest is the styling part that we would be covering after a few important lectures of HTML. We would be covering how to style your images, how to style your text particularly, and different things as well. So this was about images and links that we studied yesterday. So Ahmed is asking, can we put external link image, link like image inside internal link, like inside FAQ? So you want to put an image over here, right? So for instance, I'll move one of the images. Suppose this Greece Athens over here. So the image is over here, right? So now if I want to access this, I'll quickly create another one. So that's quite possible. We'll just write Acropolis as an information for our image. Now, if I want to source this image, I'll change this one as well, alt tag. And now if I want to change the path of my, how would I go? How do I have to proceed? I need to change. Yeah. Yes. So now I am in my main folder, right? I have to go to first FAQ and then access image. How to do that? Forward, first two dots, forward slash, go to FAQ and there lies your image. That's it, simple. And if you hit save, just see down below, there is this image, Acropolis. So this image is coming from over here, this one. So if you want to check, I'll just add some random text. If I hit save, just see this Acropolis text is over here only. So we are able to access it. So any doubts and images and links before we move ahead to one of the major topics of HTML, that is forms. So we would be studying forms today. And if time permits, we would study tables as well. So any doubts in this one before we move ahead? Okay. So just give me yes or no in chat. No doubts, right? No doubts. I'll move ahead. Simple. Okay. I'll quickly close this one and let's let me open for our forms. I'll quickly open this one and let me close this. Yeah. So simple. I'll close this one, this one, this is. So we are going to study forms. I've written simple HTML boilerplate with title form elements that is represented over here and a simple heading 2 that shows HTML form and form elements, nothing more. So now forms are one of the most important parts of website. Today, in today's lecture, I'm going to show you everything you need to know about how to create forms, how to write form elements inside those forms. So let's get started now. A simple form page I've already created. To start with form, you need to write the form tag. Like we write usual tags, similarly, there is a form tag that we need to write. So like I'll write this form tag, and every form element lies in between these tags. So right now, if I save my file, nothing happens. You won't see anything. So within these tags, all the input tags are going to be there. The user will fill up those inputs and those will be submitted further to the server. Let me show you an image. It would be more clear. So let me pull up that slide for us. Okay. Let's see. Where is that? Allow me just one moment. Yeah. So I'll just move this image. Just see over here, we have a simple form. This simple form, user wants to enter some details over here. Over here, it submits using the button. That information is sent to the browser. Browser first checks if the information is correct or not, processes it, validates it. And then suppose user is sending an email. It sends an email to the requested address and stores the details regarding who sent the image, when was the image sent, to whom image was being sent, and other required details as per the software we are using. And in turn, it sends a response to the client telling that image has been sent, or if image not sent, it has been saved in the drafts, and so much more. So remember this basic information that user enters the image, and the areas where user enters the image or selects the image, that is called your input areas. This input areas. And the button that you select to submit the information, that is called your submit button. So your information, entered information or selected information goes to the browser, goes to the server. Server validates it or saves it. There are multiple processes as per the request or as per the input being used. So most commonly used form, I would say we are daily using one of the most common forms, that is the Google home page. This is the input. This is your buttons. These are submit buttons. So it has an input text area where we can enter our queries. It has submit buttons that sends the entire form to servers, and those servers send a response back to client. So a simple form. This is a very simple form that everyone is using these days to enter their query and get the desired results. And the area where we enter the query is called input area. That is your input field. And the buttons, those are called your input or submit buttons. Now there are various types of inputs that can be put inside a form. For instance, suppose you visit a pizza ordering application and you might see a form like this before placing your order. So you need to select which size of pizza you want. These are called radio buttons. Which type of crust you want. This is called your drop down menu or select options. What kind of toppings you want. These are your check boxes. These is your name, like text input. This is your phone input. This is your text area wherein you can enter few details, like if any particular details you want regarding your order, if you want cutlery or not, you want to specify the address, location, details or anything else. And this is a simple file input tag. They have mentioned send your CV, but it's not a part of your pizza ordering app, definitely. But this is kind of input from which you can select files and you can upload those files on internet. For instance, you are applying for a job interview and on their main website, they say, okay, upload these documents like your passport or like your, we say, resume or CV. So that is done through file input. And there are two buttons. One is send button. This is submit button. Once you fill the details, you would be sending to the server. Reset button, if you have filled in the details and you want to reset it to the default values. For instance, you feel that, okay, some values were not correctly filled. You want to reset it to the default stage. When you received this form, you can do it with reset button. We would be starting all these kind of form elements along with the other. So just to give you an idea, these are the type of inputs that we would be putting inside the form tag. Okay, so let's move ahead. Let's get back to our VS Code and let's see the type of inputs we can use. So let me pull up the VS Code back again. Okay, perfect. So in general, we are clear with what is form, how different inputs are used in form, and how a typical form looks like. A very basic example is your Google homepage, which has a text area wherein you can enter your query and you can submit the request using your submit button. So now let's see within form tag what all we can do. So I'll just write a simple input. So for that, we have a particular tag that is called input tag. Whenever I write input, you see I get multiple options. You select the first one. I get by default, this is text. Right now I'm removing it to just give you an example that how input tag looks like. So if I hit save, a text area appears over here. Now input tag, just look at it. The form tag has opening and closing tag because there must be some inputs that need to be placed between the two. For input tag, it's a self-closing tag. We do not need to place any kind of data between opening and closing tag of input. Everything is handled through different attributes of input. So let's see how to do it. Now, right now, we have a simple text area. Nothing has been displayed over here. We do not see any label attached to it, like what this text area represents. To add a label, there is separate label tag. So for that, with every input, we typically write a label as well. This label, I'm just removing this for tag as of now. We would be coming to these attributes. So inside this label tag, now just see label is opening and closing tag. So there must be something we need to put. For instance, I write name over here. For instance, I'm creating a login page. The first input should be a username. So if I hit save, just see the name appears over here and I'll quickly remove this one. My text area appears over here. The text input appears over here. Now, similarly, I'm going to copy this down for our password as well. Just to make it look more real, I'll just copy this. I'll paste it down. I'll change the label to password. And over here, name and password appears. Now, this is most basic form. This is most basic input form where we have a name, that is username, and the other one is password. Now, in order to submit this form, we would need a button to do it, right? To create a button, we have simple tag that is called button tag. How we do it? We simply write button. You select it and you get a button tag. Within the button tag, now this is opening and closing tag. Within the button tag, we write some text that would appear on the button. So if I write submit, just see, hit save, this submit text is coming from here. So this is the basic input structure, basic form structure of a login page: name, password, and submit. Now from our output on the browser, we can see all these inputs and buttons. If I just move it a little bit, give it more space, name, password, and button are coming in one single line. This shows that your label, input, and your buttons are inline elements. They are inline tags. They are not taking entire width from left to right. They are taking just enough space that is required for them, and then this enough space and the standard text field and your button. Simple. So they are inline tags. They are not using the entire width from left to right. So we would be using many labels and inputs to represent different kinds of uh, input types in the form, like we saw on the pizza ordering application form. So for that, to make it easy, I would be using div, because div is a block level element. For every type of input that I would be creating, I would be putting in inside a div. Let me show you how we would be doing it. So let me do one thing. I'll create a div, simple div, and I'll remove this closing tag from here and put it after my, let's say I'll put it after my name, this particular one. And similarly, I'll do the same for my password. I'll put it after this. Now, if I'll save this one, this name would take the entire left to right with your label and input. Similarly, your password name, password, this text, as well as the area, the input area would take the second space on the page and then button. So if I hit save, just see they get stacked over each other because div is taking left to right space. This div is taking left to right space. It holds label and input for the name. This div is taking left to right space. It is taking for password and input, and then your button. Any doubts on this? General input structure, label to display the text for which the input has been designed, and input a simple text area. So when we do this, we see everything gets populated on new line. By providing div, we see everything gets populated on new line. So right now, most important thing right now is if we enter some name, so if we enter some name, I enter some password, and I hit submit button, focus over here, the page gets submitted on the current server only. This is my current dummy server. So it gets submitted over here. Nothing gets registered somewhere else. It has not been loaded, no page displayed, nothing. But we do not want this behavior to happen. We want our forms to be submitted to some other servers. For instance, so someone is asking that how to align text boxes. So that is a part of CSS. We would be studying that in CSS, how to align text boxes, how to position them one above the each other. Like this is not positioned correctly because of the text. This is longer text. This is smaller text. So that's the only reason. So we would be studying that in CSS. The alignment is a part of CSS. Right now, let's focus on the construction of form elements. So what I wanted to tell you is if I'm submitting this, it is not going anywhere. It is just getting submitted on the same server. A very fraction of second, it reloads and everything goes blank. We do not want this to happen, right? We want our request should go to the desired server. For instance, I'm entering some query in on the Google input area, Google text area. I want that query to go to Google server and fetch me the pages that are associated with that query, right? Now, in order to do that, we have a keyword. That keyword is used in form tag, and that is called action. So I'll just write action over here. It's kind of an attribute written as a simple action keyword. And the action, the address, like we have hyperlink reference, SRC, that are pointing to the website address, the address that we mention in this action tag will point to the server where we want to send our information. When we submit the form, where do we want to send this information? That is that is decided from the address mentioned in this action attribute. So in our case, we do not have any server designated outside. So I have created a page which is called submitted information.html. I've created over here only. You can see a separate page I've created. This is where I want our form to be submitted to. So I'll simply write the path to this particular file, this particular submitted information file. Whatever I write over here, whatever I'll write and hit submit, that information would go to my this page. And when I'll render this page, the information would be visible. So the idea behind using this page is to catch the information, the submitted information, so that we can check that our form elements are working correctly or not. So how would I write it? What should be the path? It is in same folder. Remember, it's in same folder. What do? We simply write the name of the file. I write simple S and VS Code would give me all the files and folders that are present in this same folder. So right now I have only one file. I will select this one, submitted information.html. Simple. The next thing that I want you to specify in your form is the method attribute. So here comes your method attribute, very important attribute. Now, what does method do for us? The value of method can be either get or post. I'll show you. I'll simply write either get. Let's see if we get any recommendation. Is it giving? Yeah. So it's giving us two major methods that we use are get and post. Now, what is get and what is post? Now, they are form of requests. So in get request, the browser is going to append all the information in your URL. We would be seeing that whenever we set get request, all that we submit, that information is first set up in the URL parameters, and that information is sent to the server. So I'll quickly mention get over here. And on the other hand, the post request is useful when we are dealing on the server side. When we are on the backend side, that time we need the post request, because post request helps the server to save the information received. So like you've sent the name and password, you want to access your Facebook account, the post request will first save the name and your password and create an account over there. And then when you try to access it at the servers, they will check if you've entered the correct name, correct password or not. So at that time, validations happen, authentication checks happen. But post request is something that we use on the server side to save the information. Get request is something that we use to catch this information, place it in URL parameters and send it to the requested server that is mentioned over here. Right now I've mentioned this file. I'll show you what this file holds. And so it would be easier for you to understand what we are doing. So let me show you something. If I use get request and if I enter something, you just see I'm right now it's just telling me that it has been gone to submitted information. You see the file is now submitted information. It is no longer form elements, remember. So if I'm sending get request, I'm being redirected to submitted information, but nothing has been catched over here. So we would be covering this, how to display the information received later on today itself. But if I put it post over here, so I'll tell you what happens. If I put post over here and if I try to submit, an error would occur because browsers are not able to render post request. Always remember, post request is only for the servers. Get requests is only for the browsers can only render the get requests. Post requests are for real servers for saving data. So while creating form, always use get request. It's very important, use get request. Simple. So now let me show you the page that I've written to capture the information, that is submitted information page. So do not worry about what is written over here. I'm just giving you an idea what I'm trying to do. So over here, I have a simple link, this simple link. Look, this is a simple link that is pointing me back to forms.html. You remember there was a button back to forms that is coming from this hyperlink that I've created. Simple internal link I've used, and that's it. And this is a little bit of JavaScript that helps us display the information that user submits from the page. So simple JavaScript, we would be covering this when we would move to JavaScript sections. But right now, this JavaScript is only to render the elements that the user has submitted on the form. So let me move back to the forms.html. Simple, nothing else. We're just trying to capture the information on this page. Okay. So we have a question like how are there any cases in that we should use post request? If you're creating a form, use get request. If you're working on the server side, that you're working on the backend side and you want to save some data, then use the post request. The request and the types of request we would be covering in great detail when we would be covering to the backend part. The Node.js part, when we would be studying that, at that time, we would be covering all different types of requests, get request, post request, your put request, and others as well. So right now, post request for real servers to save data, get request while creating the form, simple. So let's get back to form and enter details and submit. I just want to make sure that everything is working fine. I'll go back to my form, refresh it. And if I enter something, okay, it's working fine. I'll go back to my form. That's it. Now, right now, we saw that whenever I enter something and submit, nothing gets displayed. If I enter something, nothing gets displayed over here. Now, in order for an input to actually show up the form data, like I've entered something in this input and I want this to be displayed on the server side, on this side, on my submitted information page, how do we do that? For that, we use a special attribute that is called your name attribute. How do we write it? We simply write a name attribute over here. So we'll write a name attribute. Name attribute, simple attribute. The best practice is to always keep your code as consistent as possible. Try to keep the attribute names very similar to the ones that you're using in label as well. So it becomes easy for you to debug also. So right now, I'll simply write name attribute as name. I'll show you what it does. So I've just kept it same, label name as name. Now, if I hit save, just see, I'll write something. Let me write a valid name. Let's say I'm writing Harry. And let me write any password. If I hit submit, you see this name Harry. Earlier it was not coming, but now the name Harry is coming from here. This name, it is displayed over here, and Harry is the input that we gave. And let me show you where it, you see this URL parameters, this name gets appended by the browser in your URL. And this URL holds all the information regarding the form you submit. So many times we see so many details in a URL, and these details are actually the ones that either you have selected or you have visited some page, and that page has been placed in a very complex file path. So there could be many things, but over here, this form detail gets appended. And right now we are not getting anything for the password because we have not used the name attribute for password. So let me do one thing. I'll write name attribute over here. And for password, to keep it consistent, I'll call it as password only. And if I hit save, I'll go back to my form. I'll write something and let's say any password. Now, if I hit submit, just see this name, the one that I entered, and the password, that one that I entered, has been captured by the value of this attribute name and the value of this attribute password. So very important attribute. Through your name attribute only, your server is able to catch what kind of information the user has sent. So whenever you're creating a form, always make sure you mention the name. So let me go back to form and let's see what else we can do. So let me show you that even password was there on your URL. See, now you've got this password equal to the details that we mentioned in the input. You have this name equal to the name that we mentioned. So all the information that you're entering is getting appended on the URL, right? So interesting, right? So let's move ahead. Now this is what GET request does. It sets the URL. This is all happening because of GET request. GET request is gathering this data, putting it in URL. So right now we have a very basic form setup with inputs and one submit button, right? Now, if we see that our these labels, these labels are not doing anything. They're not doing anything productive for us other than just text. They're not doing anything. So normally what happens in a good form, when you click this label, the text or the input associated with this label should get highlighted. So for instance, if I click name, this should get highlighted. If I click password, this should get highlighted. Now, how to do it? For this, we have to link the input and the label together. How to do that? There is an attribute called for attribute. For, simple attribute. And here we write ID. ID we have seen, ID and classes, that's the same ID. Now, whatever you write here should be same as whatever you write here. Then only if you click on this name, the respective input would get highlighted. So for instance, I'll show you what happens. ID, if I write a name over here and for over here in this for attribute, I'll write name. If I hit save, now the label is for this name. If I click this one, just see the password one got highlighted. Why? Because the ID for the password was getting synced with the for attribute for this one. So that is the reason we never keep two same IDs. So if I keep name over here, let's see. Look, this name got first connected with this one, but my password is not getting highlighted anymore. That's why we always make sure that IDs are unique so that if this label wants to get in touch with this input, then it could get in touch with this respective ID. So we earlier I was able to access the password with this name attribute because the for attribute and ID attribute of password and name was matching. But now the for attribute found its ID earlier and it is not able to access the password. That's why we always keep IDs different. So I'll keep password as for this one and I'll keep for attribute for this one. For attribute and I'll write password over here, right? So now what's happening? This for attribute will find the ID that matches with this value, the password value, and it's over here. This for attribute will find the name value if any ID is having. Over here we have. So see the difference. If I hit save, if I click password, my password text area gets highlighted. My name area gets highlighted. So always keep IDs unique. While we were styling, there is an issue that if you keep same ID, the browser will render. It will not show any error. But while having these kind of functionalities, make sure IDs are unique. Never ever give same ID to two elements. Okay. So this was to make your labels a little bit more functional. Now, if we click the label, it is going to highlight the respective input element. Now there's another way. If you do not want to have the for attribute, suppose for any reasons you don't want to have this ID and for attribute, you can get rid of this and you can get rid of this also. If you want to work, if you want to have the same functionality, nest your input element inside your label tag. It would do the same. So I'll just remove from here and over here, I'll write this one. And if I hit save, I have nested my text as well as the input tag inside this label. So now if I hit save and if I click password, it would get highlighted. One way is to use for and ID having same values. Other is use your label tag, write your text, and then in next line, write your input tag. And then close the label tag. It would do the same thing. So, but as a good practice, always follow this one, for and ID. Right now I'm keeping it as it is for our reference, but as a good practice, always have a for attribute, always have an ID attribute. Okay. So it keeps your code more clean and more readable, because you look over here, your angular bracket is over here, then over here, text is sometimes not, we are not able to differentiate between these two. So as a good practice, keep for and ID attributes, and keep label attributes, label element separate and input element separate. So let's move ahead. So this was one type of input element, that is text type, which is set by default. You remember earlier, it came like type equals to text, type equals to text. This is by default. That's why we are able to type any generic text over here. But there are other, I'm just removing this because I want to show you other type of inputs also. So there are other type of input elements other than text, like your radio buttons, check boxes, drop down lists that we saw in that pizza ordering form. In our example, we will mention type text for our name, like I did. This is the attribute. This is the attribute where we mention different types of values to get different type of inputs over here. So now this is generic text, right? But for our password, I want to mention something else so that whenever I write something, it should not be visible. Whenever you write your password on login page, it just comes like some few stars or some other kind of hidden message encrypted. So one way is to write type equals to password. So if I do this, I enter my name, but whenever I enter password, okay, it's not working. Let's see. Okay. Look, I did a typo over here. ROD, it should have been WORD. That's why it was not working. So I'll check. Okay, I enter name and I enter password. Look, now the password has been hidden. If I put submit, the server will be able to decrypt it. Server would be able to know what that password was. But for our safety, if we have someone around and we do not want to show our password, we use type equals to password so that whenever you enter something in this area, it gets hidden. This is a very basic, I would say, not validation, not authentication also, encryption method by the browser. There are many complex methods and very advanced methods. This is very inbuilt method. So a very basic one that you should use while creating a password input on your page. So remember, input name is password. Name, what is this name? Name is being displayed on the server. So I'll show you once again. This one, this password, this name is coming from this attribute, this name attribute. And the type password is making sure that it's hidden. Right? Any doubts in this one before we move ahead? Any questions in this one? Anything which is not clear? Okay, so let's move ahead. To make our form more functional, I need to make sure my button is properly structured. Now, like we have type for our inputs, we have type for our buttons as well. So for a submit button, I can write type equals to, you see there are different buttons over here. We are getting 4 options. So I have to select submit one. Now, why this submit one? If I hit save, so let me tell you one thing. I'll just remove this as of now and show you the difference. So if I write anything, I'm not clicking submit button. I'm trying to press enter. So it's working because by default, it's a submit button. So that's what submit button does for us. But if I want to make some other button, I have to mention other type. Like we saw the other types over here. So if I'm trying to create a reset button or a simple button which should not submit, I have to mention the type. So as a good practice, always use your button as submit button inside the form. So now if you press enter without hitting, the submit button, without clicking the button, it would work, because this button is a submit button. Now, if I want to create another button that takes my page to the default value, so that is a reset button. I'll show you the example. So let's say we'll call it as reset, and the type is reset. Okay. Type is reset. Now what this button does, look, this is over here. If I write something and I see, okay, my password is not correct, I'll click reset and it would take me to the default values, that empty values. It is not submitting the form, and that is coming from this type. If I've not mentioned this, this button would have been a submit button. This is mere text. This is not doing anything. This is just text. The functionality changes from the type attribute for the button. And the reset button takes us to the default value. Right now, our default values are completely blank. That's why if we enter anything and press reset button, that takes us to the blank page, to the blank input areas. Now, there are instances when you do not want your values to be blank. When you do not want your values to be completely blank, you want to add some default value. For instance, if user does not enter anything, that default value should be sent to the server. And if a user resets the page, then the default value should be shown on certain input tag. How do we do it? That is achieved from the value attribute. So let me show you the example. So if I write value attribute over here, whatever I will mention over here, that would be set as the default value. For instance, I will write username. If I hit save, you see this username is there. Now, if I have to enter my username, I have to just press backspace and enter something. And if I password and submit, you see, this is my name that I have mentioned. But if I do not enter anything and press password anything and submit, this is the default value that goes to the server, username. And that is the default value coming from this value attribute. There are certain instances when you want certain values to be sent to the server. So Harun is asking that, can we use placeholder? Placeholder is completely different. I'll show you. Just give me a second. I'll show you that one as well. Now, why I wanted to put this value attribute. So if I hit, okay, I made a typo over here. Okay, now if I press password and if I hit reset, just see my password goes blank, but my name tag does not, my name input does not goes blank. It is set with the reset. Even after resetting the page, it goes to the default value. So default values are for this purpose. If user does not enter anything, you want to send particular value as a default value to the server. That is where we use this value attribute. Now, moving ahead, let's see what placeholder is. Like Harun asked that, can we use placeholder? Now, what's the difference between value and value and placeholder? So I'll add placeholder over my password input. So let's add placeholder, and I'll say placeholders are like information. So let's say I'll write minimum 8 characters. Let me word wrap this one. Yeah. So I'll do one thing easier for us to understand. I'll just take it to next line for easier for us to see. So this is my password label and input is inside it. And this is where label ends. So this is the placeholder I've entered. So just see this, you see this grayed out text. This is your, this is coming from your placeholder. Now what happens? Just see the difference. In value, if I type anything, this default value does not go back. It does not, it stays there. In order to remove it, I have to first clear the input area and then write something. But in this particular case, if I write a single letter, my placeholder goes away. So placeholder is just an information text. Placeholders are never sent to the server. So for instance, I'll reset my page. I'm not entering anything over here. I'll submit my page. If I submit, you see the placeholder minimum 8 characters have not been sent. Placeholders are only for the information. They are not sent to the servers, whereas the default value, this value attribute, is sent to the server. So placeholder is not a replacement of value. So are we clear with this difference? Values are sent to server. Placeholders are just an information for the user so that they can have more clarity what to do with this one. Perfect. So let's move ahead. Another thing to notice here is that we are able to submit blank name or password. So for instance, I'm able to submit this password over here. So as a rule, I should not be able to submit a blank password to the server. In login form, you would want to throw some kind of error to the user, telling them that they can't submit a blank information for certain inputs. For this, we have a very important attribute that is called required attribute. The required attribute forces the user to enter the information. You can apply it to any text. You can apply it to any input element or any form element which you feel that must be filled by the user. For instance, I'll use it for my password input, this input. I have set a default value, okay, right? And for password, I do not want the user to send empty this input tag. What do I need to do? I just need to write required. Now required does not need to specify any value. This is standalone attribute. This tells the browser that this particular field cannot be set empty. So whenever user tries to send some kind of information that has not been mentioned, but that attribute holds, sorry, that tag holds the required attribute, we would get an error. For instance, let me show you. So I've not mentioned anything. I'll save my page. And now if I try to submit, I'm getting this error. Please fill out this field. And this error message is coming from this required attribute. Over here, this required attribute is telling the browser we cannot leave this empty. So I can enter anything and then I can submit. So very important, used for those form elements which you want the user has to fill necessarily. Okay. So now, as I mentioned earlier, that this input tag can have many different types. Like one of them is text, one of them is the password, this type. So there are many other types that we would be starting today. Let's go through and analyze some of the different types we have. The number one is the email type. We would create a separate div for each input type. In the div, we would create the label like we have been doing it. We would be following this structure. A div, within div, there must be a label and input tag. And this input tag would have a different type attribute, which would create a different type of your form element. Okay, so let's create it for emails. I'll put everything between name and password. For instance, I would put everything over here. One by one, I'll keep my password and buttons as the lowest elements of my form page. So everything would be between like above this div tag. So let's create a div, simple div tag. Within this, I'll create a label, and label is for email. Let's write for attribute. Simple, we are following same structure and we need to follow it for every form element that we would be creating. So I'll write input, type is my email, and I'll simply write ID. ID should be email, and I'll write name as well. We have name also above, right? So I'll write name equals to email. Right, email. Yes. Okay. So now what happens over here? Now, if we enter, I'll quickly save this file. You see, I'm getting this email. I'm getting this text. If I click this one, this gets highlighted. That is because for and ID matches. Simple. So now what happens? So if we enter an email and it is not matching the set standard syntax, then we would get an error. So let me show you an example, right? I write this one. Now I have to mention password because it is required. I'll hit this and I'll hit submit. I'm getting an error that your email does not have this @ all the emails globally have a set standard syntax that it should have @gmail.com, @yahoo.com, and other things. So if I write let's say abc.com, so now if I hit save, it would submit. So this is kind of a browser uh, giving us beautiful checks so that user cannot enter invalid information. So one of the ways to check. So this type email automatically provides a browser check. It automatically verifies the syntax of entered input, this type email. So you can also mark this one as the required if you want the user to send email information necessarily. Right now, I'm not marking this one. So Omaruddin is asking, how can we put a specific example of email? So can you explain this question? I'm not able to get. How can we put a specific example of email? For instance, like, can you just little bit explain it more to me? I'm not able to understand the question. So are you saying, can we check if it is from Gmail, Yahoo? How can we add an example to pop up? Like example to show that enter this kind of email? Yes, you can write a placeholder. That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Let me do it for you. So what we can do is placeholder. You can write like abc@gmail.com. If I hit save, it would show over here. Okay, just do it like this. So that's correct. That's absolutely correct. So let's keep it. Let's keep it over here. Let's not remove this placeholder. So let's move ahead. Now, let's move on to an interesting field where we can set numbers. Right now, we have been dealing with generic text. Let's move on to numbers. Let's create a label that asks the user to select their age or enter their age. So we would add the attribute, an attribute by the name. So we would be creating the type number in input. Let me show you how we do it. I will create again a div. So Shekib is asking, the email input is working, but not popping the message alert for wrong formats. So are you saying that if you enter something like this and if you submit, it's not showing you this alert message? So do check if you have entered the type email. Is it correct? Is there any typing mistake? Check if you entered this type equals to email. If this is the one, just match your code with this particular lines of code and see if everything is correct. Okay. So we can, how to check what's the error. So we can do one thing. I'll keep the last 15 minutes for the doubts so that we can share the screen and I would check if what is not working correct. Okay. Okay. So all good. Perfect. So let's move ahead and see how to create an input tag that could receive numbers. So I would create a label that says age. I would add an input for the age. Let me show you. So I'll create a simple label. What do we do? I'll write age over here. I'll write for attribute simple age. I'll create input tag. So you would see me typing these things now quite often because these are required. Let me write input. So type now, see, type is number over here. Type is number. So I would write the other things, name equals to age and ID equals to age. So just see over here, I get this age and I get this drop down as well. So if I write, suppose 8 over here and use my up down keys, I can increase the number, I can decrease the number, I can go to negative numbers, I can go to positive numbers as well. If I reset, it would go blank because it usually starts with 0. Because I've not typed anything, I'll simply use my up arrow key. It would start from 1 because now it's 0, -1. So it is incrementing and decrementing at the steps of 1. Every time we hit the key, we're able to increment or decrement by 1. So this is for your number type of inputs. So if I try to enter any kind of characters inside it, it is not allowing me to do it. I'm typing the keys. It's not allowing me to enter any type of generic character. I can only enter numbers. That is because of this type number. Another important thing that we can do while specifying number input tags is that we can specify minimum and maximum values. For instance, I want the user to only select the positive numbers as their age. So I want the user to select from 1, and let's say I keep the maximum value to 150. How to do it? There are two attributes, min, let's say min, and I'll write 1 over here and I'll write max would be 150. Now, if I hit save, okay. Now, if I try to enter something, let's say -19, and if I write something and if I submit, I'm getting this error, value must be greater than or equal to 1. That is coming from this min part. And similarly, on the other hand, if I try to enter something greater than 150, I'm getting value must be less than or equal to 150. That is coming from your max attribute. So very important attributes, whenever you're setting number types, make sure you add min and max value to set the range. Otherwise, user can enter any vague value which is not suitable for your type of data, the data you want to receive from the user. So best thing is these validations are built in by the browser. We need not write them. We just need to find the correct attribute needed, and we need to use that attribute, and we would be able to use the inbuilt validations built by the browser. Another interesting thing that we can do is what we call as step. By default, if I write suppose 5 and if I hit up down key, I'm able to just increment it by 1, but I can modify it with the step attribute. So let me show you that example. So I'll write step over here, and whatever number I write inside this attribute, whatever number, the increment or decrement would happen by that number. For instance, I write 5, I hit save. Now, if I write 1 over here and I'll just go back to this one. Just see, the increment is happening by 5, 26, then 31, 36, 41, and so on. If I write 0, 0 would not be there because my min value is 1. So if I hit enter, value must be 1. So I'll start with 1. So increment by 5. You see this increment happening by 5, 46, 51, 56, 61, and so on. This step, if you want to have a specific increment or decrement number for your type of input. The next input I want to cover is the date input element. How to select date. Many times you see that you have to select current date or your birth date, enter your birth date, and you see a very small calendar that pops up. And when you click that calendar, the date picker comes up. We get a nice little date picker with this input element. Let me show you. So we have to follow the same structure to keep our code clean. So I'll write div. Inside this div, I would write my label. Let's say I call it date, and I want to get the birth date, right? And I'll have an input. Whenever I put input, I'm getting text by default. For birth date, for date picker, the input type is date, simple date. And we can write the other things, date, and we'll write ID. ID is date answer. So if I hit save, just look below age. You get this birth date with date, month, year. When you click on this one, the current day, current date pops up. You can select it from here, the 13th, 12th. And if I enter something over here, and if I submit, you see the date has been received by year, your month, and your day. The one you selected, 13th of December 2022, has been submitted. And this date part is coming from this name attribute, remember. And the ID and for attributes are helping us target this one. If I click this one, the date input gets highlighted. So very interesting one. Just like number field, we can specify minimum and maximum for the date input element. You don't want the calendar for previous 50 years or next 50 years. You want the calendar should start from a particular date till a particular date. So like there are many exams like military entry exams which are birth date specific. Only a person eligible born between this date till this date is eligible to join the army. So that kind of forms have this restrictions, and the attributes used are similar, min and max. Let me show you an example with min. So I'll write min over here, and simply I have to write first the year, then the month, and then date. So I'll just show you. For instance, I want the calendar should start from, let's say, March 15th, 2010. So I'll mention the year, I'll mention the month, and I'll mention date. So 15th of March 2010. So if I hit save, now just see, I'll go back to this one. I'll go back previous. And if I go back to 2010, I wanted to go back to 2010. Over here, I'm not getting January and February. And when I click March, I'm only getting options to select from 15th of March. So this is what date restriction has been put by min attribute. So if I try to enter something, let's say this is 30th of March, right? I want to enter, let's say 2nd of March 2010, and I enter password and submit, I would get a message that value must be either 15th of March or later. So these validations are coming from these attributes. So we can put it. So I'm not using the max attribute. We have already discussed with the number type. So I'm just using the min attribute over here. Okay. So I'm skipping the max attribute part. Next type input is very important, completely different that we did so far. It is the checkbox element. So we would write some description about the checkbox first in dev and then store each checkbox in the individual dev. Let me show you an example. Suppose I want to give a list of favorite sports the user can select from. So let me show you an example. So what do we do? So one property of div is if you write any text in between them, I'll show you like favorite sport. Even if I save, this would come up as a text. So the div are able to render the text. So just remember, I'm just entering this to make sure that our user understand what the particular checkbox is about. Now, how to do it? I'll create a div for each checkbox. Let me show you an example. Div, label, simple. I'll mark it as, let's say, first game is my soccer. I'll write is soccer, and I'll mark an input. So we have to change the type. Type is our checkbox. And I'll write the name. Name is again soccer. And I'll write ID. ID should match with the for attribute. Right. So if I hit save, just see, I'm getting an option over here to select. This is a checkbox. We're able to select. So I can create another one. I'll copy paste this one. So I'll copy paste this one. Instead of soccer, I can write tennis over here. So let's write tennis. Let's change these also. Right. So now I'm getting two checkbox options. So do not worry about styling as of now. Just focus on this one. This is the part that has been created by this section of code. A div, favorite sport text, simple text, and this is just telling what these checkboxes are for. Soccer and tennis. You can either select both of them, you can select one of them. So if I select both of them, I write some password, I hit submit, you see soccer on, tennis on. If I've selected checkbox, it shows on. So if I just come back, I write this and just see only tennis is on. I'm not sending the data for the soccer one. So the one that server receives marks it as on, right? Now this was for if you want to select multiple options. Now, what if you want to select only one option? You do not want user to select multiple options. What can we do with it? So for that, we have radio buttons. Let's create a radio button in which the user can only select one option. For instance, I'll create a radio button describing, let's say, a preferred contact method, how user wants to be contacted. Preferred contact method. User can select only one. Either he or she can receive a phone call, he or she can receive an email or a mail through postal service. So how do we do it? I'll write a div. Inside each div, we have two things, label, and I'm mentioning it as email. So simple email. We'll create an input. We'll mark it as radio. The other things are name, email, ID, email. Now let's see. If I hit save, I'm getting this one. Okay, so let's create another one to see if we are able to select only one. I'll copy paste this one and I'll copy paste another one. Let's say I'll change. Let me do one thing. Let's say I want to mark it as phone. And let me capitalize this one. So if I hit save, I'm getting this phone. Let me change over here as well. So let's write postal. That represents the postal service, normal mail through postal services. Okay, I'll hit save. So if I select this one, just see, I'm able to select right now all three. I'm able to select, I'm not able to unselect as well. Why are we not able to do that? If I even able to send it, if I submit, I'm getting on for all three, email, phone, and postal. But I don't want that. I want only one thing to be sent. In order to submit the value for the selected radio button, we use another attribute. So Harun, it's a shortcut that you can use. In my case, if you want to select multiple options, so just put your cursor on the phone, select Alt, and with the mouse click, with the you have pressed the Alt key. With the mouse click, you can put multiple cursor as well. So there's another option. I think Control D is the one. Yeah. So if you select this word and then you press Control D, it would automatically detect where these the same words are there, and you can change those words. So nice shortcut. So coming back to our topics, this email, phone, and password. I want to select only one. I don't want each one of them to be selected. For that, we have a separate attribute that is called your value attribute. So what value attribute does, it submits the selected radio button and it unchecks the other radio buttons. Let me show you. how we can do that. Okay, let's see. We have value tab, I think. Value. The name of the attribute is value. So I'll write email over here. I'll write value attribute phone over here. Value attribute as phone. And I'm writing value attribute as postal. So if I hit save, now what this would do, whenever I'll select one radio button, the other would get deselected, would not be selected. So let's see. So if I select this one, okay, it's not working. Why is it not working? Let me check what error is coming. Okay. Did I make some typing error over here? Okay. Okay. What the mistake I did, I'm able to catch. So what's happening over here is the difference between, let me show you. Let me, why this value attribute is coming. I got two things confused. So the difference between this checkbox and your radio buttons is that the radio buttons have same name for your all the input elements. So for instance, we can mark it as contact, mode of contact. So let's mark it as contact. So if I mark it as contact, so let me show you. So I just mixed two things over here. Yeah. And let me remove this value attribute as of now. Then only we would be able to understand. Yeah. So now what happens is if I click this one and then I click this one, this gets automatically unchecked. It's not getting selected. Why? Because this contact is this name is telling this particular radio buttons that all these radio buttons belong to one category. The category that we have defined under the name attribute is contact category. And whenever any element of that category is selected, the other would get deselected. So if I submit something, just see my contact is on, but I'm not able to check which particular contact is on. Is it email? Is it your phone? Is it your postal? For that, earlier we were getting these particular names from the name attributes, right? Tennis or something else. For instance, I'll select tennis, I'll select email, and I'll write this. The tennis word is coming from this name attribute. But here, the name has everything same, all three elements have same, but that is categorizing them into one box. Any element of one category is being selected, the other would be not selected. So if I submit, you see tennis is on, but here we have contact on. I don't want contact. So Omid is asking, what is the functionality of name attribute? Omid, very simple. I've discussed it from the beginning. If I remove this one, just see, if I remove this one, I've not used name attribute over here. If I select tennis, I write password required one, submit, you see I'm not able to catch tennis information. Tennis has not been caught by the server. In order for server to receive the information from the user side, we have to write the name attribute. So if I write the name tennis over here, and if I hit save, I go back to my form, I select tennis, I write some password and submit. This tennis is now being caught by the server, and that is coming from this name attribute. You see all this name, email, age, date are coming from here. Date, age, your name, email. But in radio buttons, the name is same for every input. Now, in order to make sure we catch the right value over here, we use the value attribute. So here in radio buttons, the task of the name, which was being done in earlier inputs, is performed by value attribute. So here I would write email, and here I would write value equals to, let's say, phone. Similarly, here I would write value equals to postal. So if I hit save, I go back to my form, I select postal now. I enter the required password and submit. You see the contact is now postal, selected postal. Earlier the contact was on. It was not telling which contact was there. So I'll show you again. So for instance, I remove this one, postal. I hit save, go back to my form, select postal, enter the password and submit. Contact is on. Contact has been selected, but the server does not know which contact. To tell the server in radio buttons only, remember only in radio buttons. In other inputs, we use the name attribute. In radio buttons, we use the value attribute, postal. So if I hit save and I select postal now, now contact is postal. So here name attribute is putting them in one category so that we can select only one option out of the available options. For instance, there's an option to select gender on a page. Now a person can only select one option in that category. So for those cases, we use this particular radio buttons. For instance, you're ordering some t-shirt or some jacket from your e-commerce website, and there's an option to select your size. So only one size would fit you perfectly. So in that case, we can use radio buttons that select one size. We don't want a user to select, okay, large also, medium also. So that is very random. So if I remove this contact, I'll show you an example. I'll remove this contact over here, this name attribute. What happens? If I hit save, now I can select all of these. I don't want that. To select only one, we are using this name attribute in radio button. So I'll quickly go back to original code. So any doubts on this? Because here name is doing something else. Here name is doing something else. Here name is sending the selected value to the server. Here name is putting the elements into one box so that if one element of a particular name is selected, the other cannot be selected. But to send the value to the server, we have the value attribute for radio buttons. Any doubts on this one? Perfect. The next one, we would be doing select tag, the options tag. However, time is up. In next class, we would be covering the options tag and few other very important form elements, which are very much necessary. So let me give you the assignment for the weekend. And in that assignment, we have the other tags mentioned as well. So try to research about them, and definitely we would cover them in next class. Let me show you the assignment for the weekend. I would share the drive link uh, as I shared yesterday. Was it easy to use the drive link? So we did not face any issues with the drive link, right? Perfect. I would be sharing again. And for your weekend, you have 3 assignments. Let me show you. This is the last one. Yeah. First is create a simple, try to create every input tag. You have text input, type equals to text, you have type equals to number, you have type equals to for phone. There is different type. So search what type do you use to get a phone number. For email, we have seen. For password, we have seen. For URL, you have. For text areas, you have. We would be covering all these. Try to create radio buttons. Use the name attribute, value attribute. Create checkboxes. Now we have seen a date picker. Now there you can, this is a simple text area where user needs to write date and time. Now there is an option to select date as well as time. Check this one. These, see, you need, wherever you see this sign, this calendar sign, try to make an input that gives you this date picker. You need not type it manually. You have to pick it. Try to get weekly dates. Try to get monthly dates. Search how to get monthly dates and input tags. Then there is a color picker as well. There is a way to upload file. So just research about them, study about them. Don't worry if you don't understand completely. We would be covering them in next class. try to do as many as you can. So try to go through all these and try to create an input text that takes URL. Just research about it and see if you find different types of inputs for these. So this is the list of inputs that you have to create. Don't worry about the color, background and all. Just need to create the input tags that I did on a simple white a web page. This is the first assignment. The next assignment is recreating this web page. Simple image gallery with simple text, a, a simple caption text. Now this has two images. You can have three images, but the main criteria is to have image of same sizes. Try to source images from external link. Try to navigate through different file paths, same directory, subdirectory, or in external or directory which is lying outside your main folder. And make sure every image is of same size. And the main thing I want is to have this anchor links at the top. If you click on about, it should go to about page. If you click on contact, it should go to contact page. Similarly, if you click on sign up button, it should go to sign up page. And on your sign up page, you should have this form. We have started this name. We have started this email. We have started password. We have started these radio buttons. This is text area. Try to research about it. If you find this is your select options tag, try to research about it. And we have studied these checkboxes as well. And a simple sign up button. So are we clear about the assignment? So your sign up page should go from here. Whenever you click over here, it should go to a new page where you should have this sign up form. Don't worry about color, background, or the order. Simply put them in divs. This is one div. This is another div. This is another div. This is another div. Like we did today, just do it that way. Do not worry about CSS as of now. First, go through this, find all these input tags, recreate this web page, have links on the top. Whenever you click on sign up button, have these images. And whenever you click on sign up button, it should go to a page which should have these kind of tags. So are we clear about it? Any doubts? Let me share the link for the drive. So this is the link. Try to open this link and do tell me, anyone tell me if they are able to open this link and see three images over there, one for each that I've shown you. Perfect. Not all three pages, just link two pages, the sign up form and the image gallery. The one that I've shown you over here, this one, this is for your reference. You have to first research about all these, create these elements. Try to create these elements as much as you can. Use different attributes and then go to this page. Over here, the sign up button, when you click, it should go to a page which should have these tags, these input tags. So any questions for today?